Hey, I'm going to get started by welcoming everyone. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see all of you guys here. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. This is our introduction to the teachings of the Buddha course, where over the next 3 hours, I'm going to help you guys to understand what the teachings of the Buddha are and what they are not. And then we're ultimately going to study the very first teaching of the Buddha. The very first teaching of the Buddha helps you understand the problem that he discovered in the mind, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. Because everything that the Buddha taught is about how to train your mind to get to the point where the mind is actually enlightened. What enlightenment is a mental state that you can experience in this life or at death, where your mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. By the time you get to enlightenment, you won't experience any discontent feelings. You will have eliminated all your anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. That's what the Buddhist teachings are for, is to do this inner work, this inner growth, this inner development. So I'm going to help you guys to understand what his teachings are and what they are not, because there's a lot of misunderstandings in the world. Not very many people in the world actually study based on the original teachings of the Buddha. So I'm going to help you guys to be able to see that and be able to see what the Buddha actually taught and what he didn't teach. So if you're interested in moving your mind closer and closer to this enlightened mental state, you'll have the ability to do that. And like I mentioned, we'll ultimately study his very first teaching, which is a very great place to get started on the path. Everybody that the Buddha would encounter as a new student, he would start them with this very first teaching as the beginning of the path to enlightenment. The way that we're going to start our class is with some meditation. This is a great way to get introduced to the teachings of the Buddha, is just to do a little bit of the training, a little bit of the meditation. But you would need much more than just meditation to get to enlightenment. So that's why afterwards I'll share some teachings with you guys. One of the biggest myths about the life story of the Buddha is sometimes people think that he sat under a tree, he meditated, and then instantly got to enlightenment. And this actually isn't true. It was 6 years that it took for him to train his mind to be able to get to this enlightened mental state. So if you'd like to join for meditation, you're welcome to do so. I start with some chanting to be able to ease the mind into meditation. And if you'd like to chant along, you can. There's chanting sheets over there on the cabinet. You're welcome to help yourself and chant along if you'd like, because it actually helps to ease your mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. During the lifetime of the Buddha, he used chanting as a way to help his students to commit the teachings to memory. Every 2 weeks, his students would come together and they would recite his teachings orally. So he used chanting as a learning tool, as a learning device. He doesn't have any rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer in his teachings. If you're seeing those kinds of things associated with his teachings, they're actually not his teachings. So he used chanting as a learning tool, as a learning device. They didn't have books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts. They didn't have YouTube 2,500 years ago. So they needed a way to remember the teachings. So they would orally recite them. That's where chanting comes from. So you can see it's not a ritual or a ceremony or prayer. Today we use it as a way to help ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. So you're welcome to chant along if you like. If you read the English translations, you're going to see a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha. And because of this, I don't think the Buddha even created these chants himself. They were probably created by his students, either during his life or after his death. Because the Buddha wouldn't have gone around and said, here, chant these chants to me out of respect for me. This would be ego or arrogance. And by the time you get to enlightenment, you don't think of yourself as being above people. And you also don't think of yourself as being below people either. You just think of everyone as being equal. So I'm sure he wouldn't have created chants and asked his students to chant these things to him. But if you learn from a teacher how to move from anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other discontent feelings to the peaceful and joyful mental state that is enlightenment, and this teacher didn't want anything from you or expect anything from you, they were just helping you out of the kindness of their heart, you might actually have a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for that person too. So that's why I think these came from his students. In terms of once we do the chanting, you're going to hear me come in after that with some guidance, where I'm essentially going to be instructing you and guiding you how to meditate while we're actually meditating. But then there's going to be a period of time of quietness where we're just all meditating together. During this period of time of quietness, I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds. You might hear a car go by, a dog barking, a bird chirping. Someone here could cough or sneeze. This is all normal. If you're in meditation, craving permanent silence and you hear a sound, you will cause your mind to be annoyed or frustrated. But if you understand that the world around you is impermanent, it's constantly changing, when you hear that sound, you understand that's exactly how the world works. That's the way it functions. And you can be at ease and be peaceful in your meditation, understanding that that sound is going to arise, it's going to change, and it's going to fade away. So during that period of time of quietness, I'm sure you'll hear occasional sounds here and there, but you can rest at ease, understanding that's quite normal. Then we're going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting. And then that's where I'll start today's class, helping you guys to understand the teachings of the Buddha, what they are, what they aren't, and then ultimately we'll study his very first teaching. In terms of your body position for meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught: seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you would learn these different positions at different times as part of your journey to enlightenment. It's kind of like having a tool belt, and you use these different tools at different times during your journey. But oftentimes people are first starting in the seated position. So as an introduction to the teachings of the Buddha, I'll share with you guys a little bit of guidance on the seated position just to help you get started. But just understand there's not just one way to sit, because that would be permanence, and we don't live in that world. Everybody's going to find different things to be comfortable. So you can use something that I'm sharing with you, or you could use something that you come up with on your own. It's really up to you. As long as the body's comfortable, you're not interested in it being painful or luxurious, but instead in the middle where it's comfortable. So you could sit on the floor, you could sit in a chair. If someone's at home, you might be on a bench or a sofa or in a wheelchair. You can sit however you like. But if you're on the floor, you might have some cushions under your rear. This will kind of help soften your seat a bit. And if you're going to bring your legs together in the cross-leg position, you might just decide to do that lightly. Whereas if they're real tight, this can impede the circulation and cause pain in the lower body. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets your hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, allowing the circulation to flow. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use it, but it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way. There's other options here as well. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you can put your hands and arms wherever you like. The same thing's true if you're in a chair or a bench or a sofa or a wheelchair. You can sit however you like. Some people put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, but you can see me sitting in a chair here with my legs crossed, so this is an option as well. And then you can put your hands and arms wherever you like. It's helpful if the upper body is erect, with the sternum up and the shoulders back. It'll help keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. What meditation is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities. So you would like the mind to be attentive and alert during the meditation. Whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be in the middle with the sternum up and the shoulders back, because not only will it keep your mind attentive and alert, but it'll make it easy for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So again, I'm going to start with some chanting. You guys are welcome to join in, and then I'll come back in with the guidance afterwards. Arahang Sama Sambuddho Mahakawa Wat Tung Mahakawanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakawata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakawato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Sammasambuddhassa นะโมอะระหะสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมอะระหะสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสเอมะเกวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, in the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here, you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath, not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up to the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There is nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. หังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมะเกวาโอตังมหาเกวันนังอภิวาเตมิสวากขาโตมะเกวตาธัมโมดามังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมะเกวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะเกวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารนังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสรังปุโตภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, good afternoon to all of you guys. Welcome. Nice to see everyone here. I'm going to help you guys to have an introduction to the teachings of the Buddha by helping you guys to understand what he taught and what he didn't teach. We're going to end up taking a break so that you guys can spend time talking with each other, stretching your legs, using the restroom, having some snacks or whatever it is you'd like to do. And then we're going to come back and I'm going to help you guys understand the very first teaching of the Buddha. As I'm teaching, I'm going to be pausing a few times and opening up for questions because that's part of the path to enlightenment, is to be able to get clarification on what it is that you're learning. So as I pause at different times and open up for questions, we have microphones here in the middle of the room in that white bowl, and there's some up here as well. If you could get a microphone and take that back to your seat, then if you turn it on by pressing the gray button, you'll see the lights come on. And if you hold this up to your chin, we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online. And then you can keep these with you because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can just share the microphone with them. And if you're not using it, if you could turn it off, that'll be helpful so we don't get feedback through the speakers. And for anybody who's online, you guys can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, or in Zoom you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and ask any and all questions that you like that way. So to be able to start introducing you to the teachings of the Buddha, I'm going to help by just helping you to understand what an actual Buddha is. This is a great place to actually get started in introducing you to the teachings of the Buddha, is just helping you understand what is a Buddha. Sometimes people don't know what a Buddha actually is. So there's three primary criteria of what makes a Buddha a Buddha. The first one is that they get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. Then the second one is that they will dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings with countless people, and countless people will get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. The third criteria is that they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. So these are the three primary criteria of what makes a Buddha a Buddha. They get to enlightenment by themselves, they dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their teachings, and countless people will get to enlightenment, and then they will preserve their teachings, so many more people will get to enlightenment after their death. There's other criteria as well. For example, an individual who's getting to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides, they actually have a profound memory. This is actually how they're able to get to enlightenment without the help of any teachers or any guides, where like the average human being, they have a certain limited capacity with the type of memory that they have. It's kind of like a hard drive on a computer, that a hard drive might have 500 gigabytes or 1 terabyte. And when you get to the full capacity of your hard drive, you've got to delete old files in order to store new files. So that's why if you think back to your childhood, you just have spotty memories. You don't remember everything about your childhood. You just kind of have spotty memories here and there. But the last 5 or 10 years, you can remember that pretty well because you're storing those new files, but you're having to delete the old files in order to store those new files. Well, an individual who's going to become a Buddha, even in the unenlightened state, they have an unlimited memory. They can remember countless details about their current life and their previous lives as well. And what they do is they accumulate all this wisdom to the point where they apply it in their last life to be able to get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. That's how they actually do it. Also, they can quickly determine the condition of someone's mind just by spending time with that person, because they can observe the quality of that person's mind. They don't do this in a judgmental way, and they also don't do it with people who aren't their students. But their students, they're able to help them to overcome the challenges that they have in their mind by observing the qualities of their mind. And they can determine those qualities by spending time with that person. And then they're also a living, breathing, walking example of their teachings. A Buddha, whatever they're teaching, in their spoken words, they're going to also be practicing those same things. So they understand that they're teaching just as much through their spoken words as they are through their actions. So they're teaching through their actions as well. So these are the criteria of what makes a Buddha a Buddha. And this is a very rare type of individual in the world. You'll hear some people tell you that everybody is a Buddha, but this isn't actually true. The Buddha never actually taught that. That's what people are saying today. But the Buddha explained what a actual Buddha is. So a Buddha meets these criteria, and this type of individual is very rare in the world. The last one that the world's currently aware of existed over 2,500 years ago. So you're going to need teachers and guides to help you along the path. We refer to this type of individual who's a Buddha as a fully, perfectly enlightened one. The reason why is because they don't have teachers or guides. So for example, if they try a certain meditation and they realize that it's working to improve the condition of their mind, then they know that that's part of the path to enlightenment. And if it's not improving the condition of their mind, they will discard it, understanding that that's not part of the path. But an individual who's learning from an average teacher, what that person will tend to do is they will tend to accumulate things and they will get to enlightenment, but maybe 80–90% of what they learned actually led to their enlightenment, or there might still be a few things that they're holding on to that didn't actually lead to their enlightenment, but they're just kind of holding on to those things because they're doing it out of maybe respect for their teacher, for example. So that's why we don't refer to that person as a fully, perfectly enlightened one. They're enlightened, and that's wonderful that they've gotten to enlightenment, but they're not fully, perfectly enlightened. They have like a little bit of extra baggage, so to speak. Where this individual that got to enlightenment by themselves, they don't have that. They discard anything that doesn't lead to enlightenment, so that by the time they get to enlightenment, what they understand is the entire path to enlightenment. They understand it very clear, very precise. And now they spend the rest of their life illuminating that path, making it very clear for other people how to be able to get to enlightenment. So this is what a Buddha is. And we refer to this individual as a fully, perfectly enlightened one. And they're very rare in the world. In terms of what the Buddha's teachings are, is they are a path to attaining enlightenment in this life through purification of the mind. The Buddha discovered these individual pollutions that are in the mind and how to uproot those. He figured out the tools and the techniques of how to get rid of them because his mind had those same pollutions. And when he was able to eliminate them through training, he understood that his mind was enlightened through purification of the mind. When you get to enlightenment, you'll notice that the mind is completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. It's a permanent mental state where the mind no longer experiences any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All of this is eliminated because you've uprooted the causes and conditions that are producing it. Oftentimes people think it's the outside world that's causing these feelings to occur, but it's actually what's going on in your own mind. And this is what the Buddha discovered. And you'll see that in the first teaching that the Buddha shares in a way that you can independently verify, because none of the teachings of the Buddha are based in belief. You need to independently verify what it is that he's teaching you. And by doing so, you'll actually cultivate wisdom and get to the point where your mind's experiencing more and more of those qualities as well. So by the time you uproot these pollutions through purification of the mind, you'll see that the mind is performing optimally, that you have a high degree of focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory. Because in the unenlightened state, when you have these pollutions in the mind, you'll lack these qualities, where you'll lack focus, concentration, clarity, and memory. But by the time your mind's performing optimally, having uprooted these pollutions, you'll see these qualities kind of coming into your mind more and more and more, and you'll be able to apply them in your day-to-day life. You'll notice that you have deep wisdom about the world that other people don't actually have. The Buddha is teaching you about how the world functions and what the world's like. So you'll actually have wisdom of how to deal with certain things that you once struggled with and you had difficulties with. Now it'll just be so easy for you to be able to handle those kinds of things. Everything will be at ease for you. You'll notice that you'll be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to everybody around you. Where in the unenlightened state, you have difficulties with that. There are certain situations where you'll be bitter and harsh and hostile in those situations. But that's just coming from the pollutions that are in the mind. When you uproot those out of the mind, you'll be able to be polite, kind, friendly, respectful to everybody and anybody. You won't be causing any harm to others any longer. And because of this, you're going to see that your personal and professional relationships are really conducted with ease, that they're really blossoming, that you have harmonious relationships. Where in the unenlightened state, you'll have some relationships that are going well, but you'll have others that you'll have difficulties and struggles in. Maybe with your parents or your siblings, your life partner, maybe your children. You might be struggling in these relationships where there's a certain amount of bitterness or harshness or hostility. And you can eliminate all of that through training your mind. What people tend to think is that they need to change the other person, and that's how they're going to get to peace in that relationship. But what the Buddha helps you to do is focus on the real source of the problem, which is inside one's own mind. And when you fix that, you'll actually be able to improve your relationships because you won't be bitter and harsh and hostile anymore. You'll see these relationships really improving. You'll get to the point where you're not even in a bad mood anymore. It's physically impossible for an enlightened being to experience a bad mood. So the way this is happening is through purification of the mind. And at the deepest level of detail, we refer to the pollutions in the mind as the 10 fetters. These fetters are the pollutions that are keeping the mind in the unenlightened state. The Buddha refers to them as fetters because during his lifetime, if they were trying to keep you confined to a certain area, they would attach a fetter around your ankle. What this is a shackle and a chain and a ball, and they would just keep you out in a field. Where today we put those types of people in jail cells or prison cells, where during his lifetime they would just attach this fetter to your ankle, and then now you would be basically confined to this particular area. So when he discovers these pollutions in the mind, he calls them fetters because it's keeping the mind trapped in this unenlightened state, continuing to experience anger and sadness and frustration and all these other feelings over and over and over again. But when we talk about it from a high level, we refer to them as the 3 poisons or the 3 unwholesome roots or the 3 fires. This is craving, anger, and ignorance. I'll give you guys just a little bit of a summary of what these are so you'll understand what they are. And then we're going to get into it in more detail as you go forward on the path to enlightenment. What craving is, this is the mind's longing, yearning. This is the desire, the wanting and expecting things to be a certain way. The mind in the unenlightened state is craving permanence. It's seeking satisfaction externally, thinking that something external is going to provide lasting satisfaction. So the mind will chase it and chase it and chase it and chase it. And if the mind gets what it wants, it will get pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, or euphoria. But if the mind doesn't get what it wants, it'll experience painful feelings like anger, sadness, or frustration. The mind's longing, yearning for things. So for example, if you look outside and it's sunny and you get really happy and excited about that, that's because your craving is getting fulfilled. You're longing, yearning for the sun to be there. Maybe you would like to go hiking or biking or go out on a boat or some other outdoor activity, and you're so excited. Yay, I can go outside today. It's sunny. But the problem with this is it's temporary, because if you go take a shower and you come out and it's raining, you'll be sad. You'll be frustrated because you based your feeling of happiness on something that is not permanent. The sun is not permanent. So if you base your happiness on the sun, then that means you can only be happy when it's sunny. And now when it changes, you'll experience anger, sadness, or frustration. Or say, for example, you get really happy when your bank account balance is up here. You might get really happy and excited about that. And then when it goes down here, you'll be sad or frustrated or irritated. The only thing that's happened here is change. But the mind in the unenlightened state craves permanence. The mind is longing, yearning, and craving, wanting, expecting things to be a certain way. It's almost like an unquenchable thirst that the mind has. It thinks, if I can just get more money, everything will be better in my life. Or if I can just get that new boyfriend or girlfriend, everything will be better. The mind thinks that there's something external that's going to create lasting satisfaction, so it chases after it. And it can only be happy if it gets what it wants. And then if it doesn't get what it wants, it gets the painful feelings. When those painful feelings are arising, there's this anger that comes into the mind, the frustration, the bitterness, the hostility. And the mind firmly believes this is coming from something external. So what the mind will tend to do is it'll be unskillful. It'll tend to push people away, or it'll push a situation away. You might have done this where you've pushed away friends or family out of your life thinking that that was going to solve your problem. But you can see that that didn't solve the problem because you still get angry. You still get frustrated. If they were the true cause of your problem, when you push them out of your life, you would be happy and peaceful from that point forward. This is called aversion, where the mind is pushing away a person or a situation, thinking that that's the source of your anger and frustration. Or the second thing you'll do when you don't understand that it's craving, desire, attachment that is causing the anger is you'll tend to be bitter and harsh and hostile to people through your intentions, speech, and actions. It's almost like an animal growling and roaring at another animal, trying to fear it into doing things your way. It's like, do things my way, put your clothes away, bring home some bread, bring home some milk, bring home the eggs. Why didn't you bring those home? Right? It's like growling and roaring at this other person, trying to fear them into doing things your way. And this just damages your relationships. But the mind firmly believes it's coming from the other person. You might actually feel justified in your anger. Or the third thing that you'll tend to do is put expectations on people and try to pressure them or control them to do things your way. And people might actually be doing this to you too, where they're pushing you away. They're being bitter, harsh, and hostile to you, or they're putting expectations on you and trying to pressure you to do things their way. So where all that's coming from is this third one. It's called ignorance, or the unknowing of true reality. I don't usually use this word ignorance. I only use it because other teachers use it. People are translating the words of the Buddha into English, but the Buddha wouldn't have called people ignorant or stupid or foolish. An enlightened being doesn't talk in degrading and diminishing ways to other people. Instead, a better way to think of it is the lack of wisdom. the unknowing of true reality, confusion, misunderstanding, or misperception. The mind just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. The mind firmly believes that it's other people who are causing these feelings. It can't see the truth that it's actually coming from your own mind. But today, by the end of our time together, I'm going to help you to see this in a way that you can independently verify. So this ignorance or this unknowing of true reality, this lack of wisdom, is keeping the mind stuck in this unenlightened state because it continues to crave and it continues to have anger. So while we call it craving, anger, and ignorance, it's actually because of ignorance that craving and anger continues. If it wasn't for this lack of wisdom, the mind would have already eliminated its craving. It would have already eliminated its anger. But because this lack of wisdom is in the mind, it continues to crave and it continues to have anger. So this is what you're purifying the mind of. You're getting rid of these out of the mind. So you can get to a point where you're just always peaceful and always joyful with everything that's going on around you. No matter what's happening, there's nothing that can shake up your mind by the time you get to enlightenment. So this is what the Buddha taught, is this purification of the mind, this path leading to purification. And he taught the cultivation of wisdom, because that's what's actually leading to the elimination of ignorance. That's why you can't believe any of the teachings of the Buddha. With belief, you don't know what's true or false. You're just believing it because someone convinced you to believe it, or you convinced yourself to believe it. So you've got to get to wisdom. And what the Buddha is helping you to cultivate wisdom about is the natural laws of existence. He's teaching you about how the world actually functions based in these natural laws. The main natural law that he's teaching you about is called the natural law of Gotama. You might have heard this referred to as karma. This is the way a lot of people refer to it. But this is the Sanskrit version. It's a different language, where the original teachings of the Buddha are in the Pali language. So people will use the word Gama. It's the same thing. It's just a different language that people are using. If this translated to just one English word, I would just use that because it'd be easier for everyone, but it doesn't translate to one English word. So I still need to use this word Gama. What this means is cause and effect, or action and result, the results of your decisions. It's nothing mystical or magical. It's not about punishments and rewards. It's not about who's to blame or who's at fault. There's no being who's overseeing this and controlling who gets what. It's a natural law. It's like a sequence of events. It's just like the natural law of gravity. Nobody's overseeing that. Nobody's controlling it. It's just a natural law that affects every single one of us, whether we're aware of it or not. And when you lack wisdom of a natural law, you're going to tend to make unwise decisions, and it's going to produce unwholesome results for you. So that's why when we were children, we struggled. We fell down, we hit our head, we bumped our elbows, we broke our toys, we cried and cried and cried because we were living in a world that we didn't understand. We didn't understand this natural law of gravity. We never believed in it. We actually saw it for ourselves, right? We can see that the natural law of gravity is a real thing, right? Slowly but surely, we gained wisdom of this natural law. And now we make wise decisions. That's why we don't struggle with that natural law anymore. We've gotten to the point where we can ride bicycles, we can climb ladders, we can get on airplanes and fly all over the world, because we might say that we're fully awake to the natural law of the natural law of gravity. That what it means to be awake is to cultivate wisdom, that we fully cultivated wisdom. So we make wiser decisions now. We tie our shoes a bit tighter. We look at the surface of the sidewalk. We stopped being so giddy and bouncing around all the time as children. And that's why we experience more improvement. We experience better results because we don't struggle with that natural law anymore. But there's this other natural law that's affecting you, whether you're aware of it or not. And it's called the natural law of Gama. So what the Buddha is helping you to be able to do is awaken to this natural law, meaning cultivate wisdom about this natural law. And the way that you cultivate wisdom about something is you never believe it. Don't ever believe in anything with the teachings of the Buddha. Don't believe anything I say. Don't believe things I write in books. Don't believe anything anybody else says. You're an independent practitioner who's looking to cultivate wisdom. You're not a devotee. You're not a follower or anything like that. You are your own independent practitioner looking to cultivate wisdom. And a teacher is essentially like a tour guide, pointing out for you the things that you need to learn and understand. So what you do is you learn, investigate, and examine the teachings of the Buddha intellectually. Then you start moving those teachings into reflection, where you reflect, whether they're true or they're false, based on your own direct experience in life. Then you practice his teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life, making decisions through these teachings. I'm going to show you how to do this with this very first teaching, so you can walk through this learning, this reflection, and this practice. Because as you're practicing his teachings and you're starting to train your mind, making wiser and wiser decisions, that's where things get better and better in your life, because you're integrating the teachings into your day-to-day life. So that's what you would like to be able to do, is learn, reflect, and practice. That's what's going to acquire wisdom. So the Buddha didn't teach you how the world should be. He didn't give you a bunch of rules and commandments to follow, that this is the way the world should be, and that if everybody follows these rules and commandments, the world will become a better place. That's not what he did. Instead, he's explaining to you the way the world is. By understanding the way the world is, now you will navigate it more peacefully and more joyfully. If you've ever watched the news, or if you've ever heard from a friend or family member of what was going on, and you're just like, I don't understand why they keep doing that. I don't understand why that's happening. Why is that going on? This is the mind living in a world that you don't understand, and you will struggle. You'll have difficulties. You'll have stress and anxiety and frustration and these other feelings. That's the mind struggling to live in a world that it doesn't understand. But when you're awakening, you're cultivating wisdom about how the world is, and that's what the Buddha is doing for you. So slowly but surely, you're training the mind to get to this complete peace and joy through acquiring wisdom, by cultivating wisdom in these natural laws of existence and eradicating these pollutions out of the mind. You're gradually bringing down these pollutions, and you're gradually increasing wholesome qualities in your mind. And as you do, you're going to see gradual improvement through gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. Enlightenment isn't instantaneous. The Buddha talks about this in his teachings, and you'll see that this is true in your own life. Because as you're gradually training your mind, there'll be situations that you once were getting angry and frustrated, and you'll see that your mind's not doing that anymore, that you're actually quite peaceful and quite joyful. But these other situations over here, you're still angry, you're still frustrated. So it's just going to take gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress to be able to train your mind. And you're awakening to these natural laws, to be able to understand how the world is. The teachings of the Buddha are timeless. He spoke very clear, very concise, and very precise. The reason why his teachings are timeless is because these natural laws that he taught, they don't change. It's the same natural laws that existed 2,500 years ago that exist today. So that's why his teachings are timeless. He spoke very clear, very concise, and very precise. So when you see his teachings and you read his teachings, they're very easy to understand. It's just that you need to be able to, look at them and understand them, and then gradually verify them as you go through your life. The Buddha did teach about the cycle of rebirth and these 5 realms of existence, of hell, the animal realm, afflicted spirits, which are like ghosts, the human realm, and the heavenly realm. Now, you guys just heard me say there's no belief in the teachings of the Buddha, including this stuff. You never believe these things, but instead you can actually independently verify these things. You might not have the wisdom right now of how to do that, but in our book series, in volume 11, chapter 105, I have 17 different criteria of how to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. Right now, you're probably believing that you only have one life, but you don't have any evidence that you only have one life. It's just that maybe you can't remember your previous lives right now. So the Buddha actually taught this for a reason. And I have this in volume 11, chapter 105 for a reason, because you normally set this aside when you first get started on the path to enlightenment. You don't need to rush out and start independently verifying the cycle of rebirth and the 5 realms of existence. But at some point, probably 2 years, 3 years into your development, it's time for you to start looking at those things, and you can actually independently verify it. I'll share with you why the Buddha taught these things so you'll understand why, and then in the future, when you approach it, you can understand why he taught it, and you can actually start learning about it. But at the beginning like this, I suggest you just set it aside. The reason why he taught these things, first of all, is because it's true. It's actually the way the world truly functions, that there is a cycle of rebirth and there are these 5 realms of existence. But the other reasons why he taught this is because if you're training your mind with these teachings that the Buddha taught, and you're getting rid of all these pollutions out of the mind, there's the potential that you might start observing your past lives. you might actually start having memories, vivid memories of your past lives. And if you didn't understand that this is what it is, it could really shake you up. For example, let's just say you started having vivid memories of being murdered, and this just was reoccurring in your mind over and over and over and over again. It just kept replaying, almost like a song, just replaying over and over and over in your mind. You know it didn't happen in this life because you're still alive, right? But if you kept having these recurring memories of being murdered, it could really shake you up if you didn't understand that was your past life, and you could train your mind to let that go. In terms of these 5 realms of existence, some people can see these beings, like hell beings, afflicted spirits, which are ghosts, and heavenly beings. These are formless beings. They don't have physical form, but some people can actually see them. And if you didn't understand that that was true reality, it could really shake you up. You could actually be scared or fearful in that situation. But if you understand that that's normal, then you can just be like, all right, well, there's a ghost. No big deal. I'm not causing harm to it. It's not causing harm to me. And you can just move on, right? And the third reason why he taught this is some people can actually hear communication from these beings. Hell beings, afflicted spirits, and heavenly beings, they're all in the same time and space as us. Sometimes people think hell beings are deep down in the core of the earth, or heavenly beings are way up in the sky somewhere. This isn't true. Just like human beings and animals are in the same time and space, like there's a human being who's sitting here now, and if I got up and left, there could potentially be a squirrel or a cockroach or a gecko could come and sit here in this chair. It's the same thing with these other beings. They're all in the same time and space as all of us. So some people can see them and some people can hear them. And you can train your mind to ignore this. Just like if you were at a restaurant and 2 tables over, there's someone was maybe speaking a little bit loud, right? You can train your mind to ignore that and just focus on the conversation that you're having. The same thing is true with these beings. As you hear them, you can actually train your mind to ignore it if that's what you would like to do. But again, if you didn't understand this is the way the world is and you were hearing things that other people didn't hear, you could think that you're actually going crazy, where in reality, it's your mind's pollution that's being lifted out of the mind, and you're starting to become more aware of what's going on around you. So you're never interested in believing these things, but just understand the Buddha taught them for a reason, because he's teaching you how the world is. And now by understanding how the world is, you can understand and you can be peaceful and joyful. Your mind doesn't have to be shaken up just because you maybe saw a ghost or something like that. So I suggest you set this aside when you first get started. That's the best thing to do. And then sometimes people think the Buddha didn't teach about this being of God. You will hear some people tell you that the Buddha rejected God, or the Buddha denied the existence of God. Or some people will tell you that when the Buddha was asked the question about God, he just didn't answer it. This isn't actually true. If you look into the original teachings of the Buddha, you will see that he taught about this being. But he didn't make this being the center of his teachings, because it's not this being who determines whether you get to enlightenment or not. He didn't put the God at the center of his teachings. He actually put you at the center of his teachings, because it's you that determines whether you get to enlightenment or not. So this being of God, he did teach about this being, but he doesn't teach you to worship this being. He doesn't teach you to praise this being. He doesn't teach you that this being controls what you experience. Instead, he helps you to be able to see that it's your own decisions that lead to any particular result that you experience. But he did teach about this being. And if anybody shares with you that he didn't, it just means they haven't penetrated his teachings deeply enough. Because if you look closely at his teachings, you'll see it in a lot of different places that he actually shared about this being. But for the most part, he's teaching you because he's putting you at the center of his teachings. And then the largest, most complete collection of the teachings of the Buddha are in something called the Pali Canon. We refer to it as the Pali Canon because it was in the original text. It's the Pali language. It's 45 books that are about this thick. And what our community has done is we've consolidated it into 13 books so that it's more approachable and you can actually learn it. You don't actually need all 45 books to be able to get to enlightenment, because there's a lot of repetition in these books. So this is the largest, most complete collection of his teachings, where it documents his teachings and his discourses. And you never believe those things, but instead you learn them, you reflect on them, and you practice them. So we've consolidated it into this book series, and we call it The Words of the Buddha, The Path to Enlightenment, Revealing the Hidden, because for a long time, these teachings have been hidden. not intentionally hidden, but kind of inadvertently hidden. Because in order to print out 45 volumes of books that are this thick, here in Thailand, it would cost the average person about 3 months of your salary. So you probably don't own any book collections worth 3 months of your salary. So the average person, the average temple, doesn't actually even have access to the original words of the Buddha. This can sound very strange for somebody, especially if you're coming from like a Christian background or a Muslim background or something like that, because there's kind of just one book, right? And everybody kind of has that. Like I know when I was growing up, I used to go to hotels and stuff as like we were traveling as a family, and you open the drawer at the hotel and there's a Bible sitting there. They're like everywhere, right? You go to a doctor's office, they're sitting right there in the doctor's office so people can pick it up and actually read it. But that's not the case with 45 books that are this thick. They're not going to be in every single hotel room. They're not going to be in the doctor's office, right? So for a long time, these teachings have been handed down orally from person to person to person. And if you know anything about an oral tradition, it's very easy for things to be changed and modified. If you ever played that game when you were a kid where maybe like I whisper to you, like the orange tiger jumped over the green fence and went to the brown barn. By the time it goes all the way around, it's going to be like the purple elephant, walked in the blue river or something like that. It'll be completely different just in a matter of 3 minutes as this story makes its way around the circle, right? So that's why we see so many misunderstandings about his teachings, is that the average person isn't actually studying his teachings. I've been to over 200 temples in my life, and I've only ever been to one temple that shares the original words of the Buddha. If you do the math on this, that's less than 1%, right? So it's very rare to study with the original words of the Buddha, but that's what you would like to do, because you can't get to enlightenment if you don't study with his original teachings. Any of the modifications and changes that people made, they actually don't lead to enlightenment. So you'd like to learn with his original teachings. And that's why we make this book series available for free, because of the way that we've done things. By being able to consolidate it, we can put it on our website, and now you can download it for free. Or you can take it and go print it if you like, because you can download the files and go print it yourself. You can get printed versions here by reimbursing us for the printing cost, and then we'll use those funds to purchase more books. Or you can order it on Amazon. And this is the way that we're helping to bring the teachings into the world. That's why this book series is called Revealing the Hidden. We're bringing the teachings into the world in a way that many people can be able to understand them. So lastly, what the teachings of the Buddha are, and then I'll just open up for questions that you guys might have for this part of our class, is the teachings of the Buddha are to heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again. That's what his teachings are for, is to do this inner work, this inner growth, this inner development, to heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again. But what's hurting you is not the outside world. There's plenty of unwholesome things that are happening in the world, plenty of unfortunate things that are happening in the world. But that's not what's causing your anger and frustration. Because if it was, you'd never be able to get to enlightenment. The Buddha would have never been able to get to enlightenment. He didn't go around the world trying to change other people. He actually did the work to change his own mind. And you can actually see his teachings are very tangible, and you can actually experience this as you're learning and practicing the teachings. What's hurting you is actually inside your own mind, and you can change that. You can transform that, and then you don't ever need to hurt ever again. That's what his teachings are. So any questions here on what his teachings are? No questions? Okay, let me see. I don't see any online either. Okay, so let me share with you guys what the teachings of the Buddha are not. This is one of the ways that I actually teach, is I will share with you what something is, and then I'll share with you what something is not, because it helps you to understand what something is. The teachings of the Buddha are not a collection of beliefs, doctrine, concepts, opinions, and views that will produce a pleasant afterlife if you believe in them, and an unpleasant afterlife if you don't believe in them. In fact, his teachings aren't about an afterlife at all. It's not about what's going to happen next. It's about getting to a wonderful life now, so you can experience peace and joy now in this life. And his teachings are not belief. They're not opinions. They're not views. It's truths that you can actually independently verify. You can independently verify each one of his teachings. So this is not what the teachings of the Buddha are. Depending on how you think about religion, I would say the teachings of the Buddha are not a religion. If you think about religion as one person sitting at the top telling everybody else what they should or shouldn't be doing, or if you think about rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, and that's religion, or if you think about religion as rules and commandments that everyone must follow in order to create a peaceful world, the Buddhist teachings don't have any of these things. There's not one person sitting at the top of Buddhism telling everyone what to do. His teachings don't contain any rites, rituals, ceremonies, or worship. If you're seeing those things associated with his teachings, those are misunderstandings. The Buddha never actually taught any of those things. And if people are presenting the teachings as rules and commandments that everyone must follow, you'll never get to enlightenment following rules. You need to be able to understand the world around you. The world's not black and white. Oftentimes that's what the mind wants to do, is it wants to think of the world as black and white, and it wants rules, but that's not what's going to lead to your enlightenment. So if you think about religion in this way, then we can say that the teachings of the Buddha are not even a religion. The teachings of the Buddha are not punishments and rewards. Sometimes that's the way people are taught about these kinds of things. You know, there's kind of these punishments if you do these things, and there's these rewards you're going to get if you do these things. This isn't what he actually taught. So you won't see that kind of stuff. You also won't see mystical or magical stuff. You won't see superstition or auspicious things in his teachings. Also, his teachings are not something to attempt to force others to do or convince other people to do. Sometimes when people come to places like this, you learn a bunch of things and then they teach you to go out into the world and convince other people to do this stuff. That's not what the Buddhist teachings are. The teachings are for you. It's not to go out into the world and convince other people. The way that other people are going to get turned on to these teachings is the people who are in your life. They know when you get angry. They know when you get frustrated. They know when you get irritated and annoyed. And when they see you becoming more and more peaceful and more joyful, they're going to be like, hey, where'd you get that from? Where'd you get that happiness? Where'd you get that peacefulness? It's kind of like if someone was sitting in the corner of a restaurant eating a big old piece of chocolate cake, you'd be like, where'd you get that from? Right? They got this big old smile on their face. You're like, where'd you get that piece of chocolate cake from? Right? You would like to know. It's the same kind of thing, that if you start learning and practicing these teachings and you start interacting with people in a more loving and kind and warm and gentle way, people are going to feel that and they're going to see that. They're going to be like, man, what are you doing? The last 6 months, the last year, you've been so nice and so respectful and so calm. Like, what are you doing? You're like, oh, I'm doing the teachings of the Buddha. I'm learning those and practicing those. And like, where can I get some of that? That's how these teachings actually spread. So you don't need to go out into the world and convince people to do the things you're doing, but slowly but surely, people will decide on their own if they would like to learn these teachings or not. And then lastly, what the teachings of the Buddha are not is they're not teachings that are stuck in a cultural past that degrades or denigrates any group of person. Sometimes people think the Buddha taught 2,500 years ago. Surely he denigrated and disrespected somebody, right? No. Sometimes people think that maybe he degraded women or minorities or same-gender relationships or something like this. You won't find any of that stuff. If you're seeing those kinds of things today, that's what people are doing today. But that's not the teachings of the Buddha. Because sometimes people talk about, there's a temple here in the city that it says no women allowed, right? And sometimes people think that that's Buddhism. No, that's not Buddhism. The Buddha didn't teach that. That's what those people are choosing to do. Each one of these temples are independently operated, and based on the people that are at the temple, they're going to set it up based on what they would like to set it up as. So the Buddha never degraded or disparaged any group of people or any type of individual. You won't see him being disrespectful to women or minorities or people who have same-gender relationships or anything like this. Instead, it's just the opposite. He's teaching people to be respectful and kind and loving and warm to everybody and anybody, not just human beings, but animals as well. He's teaching you to be loving and respectful to everyone in the world, because that's what's going to produce the best results for you. So this is what the teachings of the Buddha are not. Any questions here that you guys would like to ask? No questions? Okay, I don't see any questions online either. So it's now about 2:15, and this is where I usually pause and give you guys a break to be able to stretch your legs, use the restroom, talk with each other. If you'd like to go get some snacks, there's a 7-Eleven down the street. We have some snacks here as well. You guys are welcome to help yourself. So why don't we take a 20-minute break and we'll just kind of pick it up at that'll be 2:35, I guess. Yeah, 2:35. I know that's a little bit of an odd number, but we'll just say 2:35 to be able to pick our class up there. So enjoy your break. And when we come back from break, what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you this very first teaching of the Buddha. This is where the Buddha explains to you the problem in the mind, the cause of the problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. In 4 simple statements, you can have a breakthrough to being able to understand what's causing these feelings and how to actually eliminate them. This is the first place that the Buddha would start people. So I'm going to help you guys with that when we get back from our break. So enjoy your break, and I'll see you guys afterwards. Okay? All right. Okay. Okay, so welcome back to you guys. Welcome back. Nice to see everyone come back. And I think we have some questions coming in. So I'm just going to pass it over to this gentleman. He's got some questions from the previous things that I was teaching.
Thank you, David. I'm Marcelo from Brazil. And while you were talking, I kind of start thinking of my common sense of what I thought the Buddhism is and what people say to us back in my country about Buddhism. And we have this very monastic view of Buddhism, like something that's very for a few people, not for everyone. And when you were talking, it made clear that it seems to be something universal, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing that sometimes I felt like hold me back from trying to seek more information about Buddhism is because I see myself as somebody that's very engaged with social causes and struggles of groups and other people.
Mm-hmm.
And when you were talking about like finding the enlightenment and the individual path like that you follow to find this enlightenment, um, I don't see much how we can put these two things together. Like, how can I individually find enlightenment, but still empathize and fight with people who struggle without without just thinking, oh, they're just not finding the truth.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
yeah.
Okay, so anything and everything that you're interested in doing in life, you'll be able to do it as an enlightened being. It's just that you would actually do it better. Because as an unenlightened being, you'll get angry and frustrated when things aren't going your way. And now it's going to damage relationships for you. So whether it's being a taxi driver or a food server or a politician or any of these things, it's going to be different model than what you currently think. Like, not all politicians are this way, of course, but some people think about politicians. They think about corruption. They think about gossiping and slandering other politicians. That's what you see now that is happening in the world, but that's not the way that an enlightened politician would function, right? They would function very differently. So getting to enlightenment isn't to avoid the world, and it's not that it's just for a select group of people. The Buddha actually had the goal of everybody in the world getting to enlightenment, and it's possible for that to occur. When you talk about empathy, though, it's important to understand that there's two ways that people teach empathy. And depending on how you've been taught, which I think is the first way that you've been taught, it actually isn't what you would actually be interested in. But then I'll teach you the second way of like actually what real empathy is. What some people teach empathy as is it's to understand people's feelings and share in those people's feelings, right? That's not what you're interested in, because if you're sharing in someone's feelings, that's like getting down into the quicksand with somebody. Somebody's angry, somebody's sad, somebody's frustrated, and you're going to be angry and sad and frustrated right along with them. That's like someone stuck in the quicksand and you're going to jump down into the quicksand with them and try to help them get out. Not a wise thing to do. What you would like to do is practice this type of empathy, which is what real empathy is. What real empathy is that you understand people's feelings. You don't have to share in someone's feelings to understand them. And by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll understand people's feelings quite well. In fact, right after I teach you this very first teaching of the Buddha, you'll understand exactly why people experience the feelings that they experience. So you don't have to share in their feelings in order to be able to have empathy. You can just understand that, okay, this person mother passed away and they're very sad, they're very upset, and you'll understand why as I share with you guys about the Four Noble Truths. But you don't have to be sad with them in order to understand their feelings. So whether it's a social cause or whether it's a political situation that you have thoughts about that you would like to see be different, you'll actually do that better as an enlightened being, because you will understand the natural laws. Where oftentimes people go out there and they try to convince and force other people to do things a certain way with a lot of anger and hostility. And in that situation, people are just going to turn away from you. But when you understand these natural laws and you can navigate the world more peacefully, you can actually have big impact and big influence with things like social causes and political movements and things like this. You'll actually do that kind of stuff much, much better as an enlightened being. Mm-hmm. Question? Yeah, just press it. You'll see the lights come on, and then it just takes a second for it to engage.
Is it on? It's on now. Hi. Quick question again. The teaching is about everything for yourself. So yourself has to enlighten yourself. It's not like you have to go and enlighten yourself so everyone else gonna get better because you enlighten. Is that everything kind of like, I'm not sure if it's correct to say selfishness, like to actually do it for yourself, and the cause of yourself being enlightened and being understandable will kind of bring it to others. So don't think of like go there and do good things for the other people. It just do the good thing for yourself, and that's going to bring everything for the other people. Is that correct understanding?
Yeah, the way that you might think about it is like a computer has a CPU, it has a central processing unit. And if the CPU is functioning well, the rest of the computer functions well. But if the CPU isn't functioning well, the monitor, the keyboard, the mouse, nothing is functioning well on this computer. The same thing is true about this being who you are. Your mind is the central processing unit. If your mind is having these pollutions that the Buddha discovered, you'll be bitter and harsh and hostile and resentful in certain situations to people around you. And now when you're putting that out, people have to deal with that. But as you become more and more enlightened, it's purifying your mind. What you're doing is you're training your mind, you're purifying your mind so that now you can be loving and kind and warm and gentle with all the people around you. And because of that, you'll see that life will really improve because you'll understand how the human mind works and how people function in day-to-day life, and you'll be able to interact with people with ease. But when you don't understand how the mind works, then it can be very much a struggle and difficult for you to be able to have relationships and things like this. So it's not about going out into the world and doing social change. That's not what it's about. It's not trying to change other people. But if you're trying to help people to be able to understand a certain aspect of the world, you can do that as an enlightened being, but you're not going to do it forcefully. Right? What people oftentimes do when they have like a political movement or a social change that they're trying to create, they will oftentimes do it very forcefully. And there'll even be sometimes like damage to public property or shutting down roads and making it difficult for people to travel on the roads and damaging businesses and looting and things like this. Not all of them, of course, but there's sometimes, situations that are like that. And people think that somehow they're making things better, where instead, if you understand what the number one problem is in the mind, which is this lack of wisdom, then if somebody, let's just say at one time in the world, it still happens, of course, but at one time in the world was quite racist and discriminatory. And there, we still see those things even today. So a great example is someone like Martin Luther King Jr. He would organize these marches where people would get together and they would just walk. And then when they would walk, they would get to a certain place and then he would talk and he would teach people about how just because we have different color of skin doesn't mean that we're lesser of individuals. We can all love each other, even though we have different colors of skin. And he would teach people that. But whether someone chose to understand that and now make decisions based on that, it's a choice for them to make. It's not about forcing people through force and aggression and hostility, because that's not going to produce beneficial results. Instead, if you're interested in seeing improvement in the world, you've got to first work on your own mind, train your own mind. Then if you would like to help others, you can help others, but you need to understand that each person has to choose to cultivate wisdom. That's what's going to help that person change. Trying to force them to change, try to guilting them, shaming them, or fearing them into doing things your way isn't what's going to produce change, because they will only do those things as long as they have that fear, as long as they have that guilt or that shame. As soon as that fear is gone, they won't make decisions that way because they don't understand the wisdom of why that's a wise decision. So what the Buddha is teaching you for your own life is to cultivate wisdom, make better decisions. And now if you decide you would like to do some kind of social change, which you're not required to do, but if somebody would like to get involved in helping others, then you would do that in a way that involves some type of education, some type of learning for people to be able to cultivate wisdom, because that's the reason why unwise things happen in the world is because there's a lack of wisdom. So in order to improve that, you need to be able to share wisdom that people can then choose on their own to be able to learn if they'd like. But that's not what the teachings of the Buddha are about. It's not about going out into the world and changing other people. It's about changing your own life. And then by doing so, if you would like to help others, you can. But oftentimes people think the difficulties and struggles that they experience on a day-to-day basis is because of the outer world. And they think the way to solve their anger and their frustration is to get other people to change, where in reality, you can actually change your own mind. And that's what's going to lead to your peace and joy. You'll be able to see that more when I share this teaching with you.
Sorry, I have one more question. I was thinking about, you said the way how you react into the world. I was thought about, like in Bible, it say about, when someone slap you in one cheek, you just give them another cheek to slap. So in the meaning of, if someone do bad to you, you're not like giving them bad. So you're not giving them, like you're not fighting with them. You kind of like giving this up, if that's what I understand. Is that similar what you mean by you're not getting angry, you're not getting frustrated?
So there's what an enlightened being is experiencing, where there is no anger, there is no frustration, right? And even though there's no hierarchy here, you'll understand what I'm saying is that an enlightened being, they're not experiencing this, right? They are going to get angry. They are going to get frustrated. Like coming here right now, and I teach you guys, and even if you come here for a year or 2 or 3, gradually, slowly but surely, you're going to see improvement as you're coming here over time. I've had some students in as short as 2 days, they've seen improvement to the way that they interact in the world and what they experience. But it's going to take gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. But it's not about that you're a bad person because you experience anger, because everybody that was ever born experiences anger, including the Buddha. It's a matter of understanding that there is this better way of life that the Buddha taught, but the unenlightened mind doesn't know how to live that better way of life yet, because it's got that lack of wisdom. So slowly but surely you gain wisdom, and you're getting closer and closer to experiencing the peace and joy. And you'll experience periods of time on your way to enlightenment where it can be several hours, several days, several weeks, several months, where your mind's actually quite peaceful and quite joyful. But because there's still pollution in the mind, you'll have a certain situation that'll occur and you feel a little bit of anger or frustration. But over time, as you gradually train your mind, you'll understand what's causing that, and you'll be able to eliminate it and get closer and closer to the ideal, which is where the mind will be performing perfectly and you won't experience anger and frustration. But on your way to enlightenment, you're going to experience anger. You're going to experience frustration. You can't just snap your fingers and get rid of all of this stuff. But slowly but surely, you can train your mind to get to that point. Okay, you guys ready to learn more? Yeah. Okay. So this is really going to open it up for you, right? So what I was just sharing before, just kind of like, hey, here's what the teachings of the Buddha are. Here's what they are not. But now we're going to actually go in and study the original teachings so that you can see the very first teaching. This is where you can have a real breakthrough, that you can see once and for all why your mind experiences these feelings. Because how could you ever eliminate them if you don't understand what's causing them? But the way the teachings of the Buddha work is that he encouraged you to listen with eager ears. I see all of you guys already doing that, where you're listening with eager ears, right? If you were to just sit back and just let the teachings roll over your head, you're not going to be able to have this breakthrough that I'm talking about. But if you really actively learn what it is that I'm sharing with you, you're going to be able to see in a way that you can independently verify what's causing these feelings and then how to actually eliminate them. And then there's a whole path for you to be able to learn that. So I'm going to walk you guys through this. And just like always, you guys can ask questions if you like, as I pause a few times. So the first thing I'm going to teach you guys in order to understand these 4 noble truths, which are these 4 simple statements that explain the problem in the mind, the cause of the problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward, is I need to first teach you the 3 universal truths. This is a building block to help you understand the 4 noble truths. This is part of what's called the Eightfold Path. This is the core central teaching of the Buddha. I'm going to be teaching you this first step right here. This is the path to enlightenment right here. But I'm going to just teach you this first step, okay? But this is what you would focus on when you're first getting started, is understanding this Eightfold Path. In order to be able to understand the Four Noble Truths, you need to first understand the three universal truths. We call these truths because the Buddha knew that they were true. I know that they're true, and other people know that they're true. But you need to know they're true, and that's why you don't believe what it is that I'm sharing with you. I'm going to show you how to learn, how to reflect, and how to practice with each one of these things. So here, this first one. Remember, the Buddha is not explaining to you the way the world should be. He's explaining to you the way the world is. And what he's explaining to you is that the world is impermanent. This is a building block to help you understand the Four Noble Truths when we get to it. He explains that there's something called conditioned objects, that these conditioned objects arise, they change, and they fade away. They are impermanent, meaning they are not permanent. They are temporary. Everything in the world around you that you can see, hear, smell, taste, anything that comes in contact with the body, or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind, it is all impermanent. It's called conditioned objects. They arise, they change, and they fade away. Then there's something called unconditioned objects. Unconditioned objects do not arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. They are actually permanent. And there's only two things. There's enlightenment. This is actually permanent. When you get to enlightenment, the mind is unconditioned. It's a permanent mental state that you'll be experiencing all throughout your life. And the natural laws of existence. They don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. That's why the teachings of the Buddha are timeless. That what he taught 2,500 years ago is just as applicable today as it was back then as it is now. So everything else in the world, anything you can see, hear, smell, taste, anything that comes in contact with the body, or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind, it is all impermanent. Okay, these are called conditioned objects. They arise, change, and fade away. That's the learning part. That's the intellectual part. I just described it to you in like 2 minutes, 3 minutes. But don't believe that, right? You just understood what it is that I just shared. Now you move it into reflection. Because you live in this world long enough, you can start reflecting. You can start looking around the world through your own direct experience to be able to verify if what I just said is true or false. Because if it's a universal truth, you should be able to see it independently, and you should be able to verify that it's true. So here's the way that you do this. I suggest you take something that you're familiar with, like this physical body. You're very familiar with it. Ask yourself, is it permanent, meaning it's exactly the same and it never changes? Or is this body impermanent, meaning it's constantly changing? So what would you say? Is this body permanent or impermanent? It's impermanent, right? Ever since the egg and sperm came together, it's been constantly changing. We get taller, we get shorter, we get bigger, we get smaller, right? We get pimples and wrinkles and moles. We get gray hair. We start losing our hair, right? This is all change. When we first are born, we don't have teeth. Then our teeth come in. That's change. Then those fall out. That's change. Then new ones come in. That's change. Then we get cavities. That's change, right? The body's constantly changing, right? This is one way you can verify it. Here's some other ways. What about your relationships? If your relationships are permanent, that means you've had exactly the same people in your life your entire life. If your relationships are impermanent, you've had people coming and going in and out of your life throughout your life. So what would you say? Are your relationships permanent or impermanent? They're impermanent, right? What about your bank account? Is your bank account very impermanent, right? It goes up and down and up and down. Some people's goes up, up, up. Some people's goes down, 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 right? That's change, right? What about the weather? Is the weather permanent or impermanent? It's impermanent, right? Constantly changing. So we could go on and on and on like this. And if that's what you need to do, you should, right? Go around the world. Look around the world. You look at the tree, you see green leaves in the tree, and you see brown leaves on the ground. That's impermanence. That's change. You're walking down the street and you are on the sidewalk and you see a crack in the sidewalk. That's change, right? You look at the wood planks on the floor of the temple. Some of them are longer, some of them are shorter, some of them are one color, some of them are a different color. This is all change. Everything's constantly changing around you. And you need to deeply soak this into the mind to be able to see this to be true. Because by the time we get to the Four Noble Truths, you're going to see why it's important to be able to understand that the world around you is impermanent. It's constantly changing. Then there's the second universal truth. This is called the universal truth of discontentedness. If you've studied this in other places, you might have heard people refer to this as suffering. I don't use this word because it doesn't accurately reflect what the Buddha was teaching, but instead I'm going to teach you guys what the Buddha taught here, and then I'll circle back and explain to you why I don't use the word suffering. So the word in the original source text in the Pali Canon is dukkha. This means discontent, discontented, or discontentedness. The Buddha is explaining what the unenlightened mind experiences, that it experiences conditioned feelings, that in the unenlightened state, you will experience conditioned pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. What a conditioned feeling is that based on some condition, you will then experience a feeling. So if you look outside and you see it's sunny outside and you get really happy and excited, based on the condition that the sun is present, you then experience pleasant feelings like happiness or excitement or elation, thrill, exhilaration, or euphoria. That's a conditioned pleasant feeling. It's based on a condition. And because it's conditional, it arises, it changes, and then it fades away. And then there's painful feelings like sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. Very painful to experience this. And those are also based on some condition. And then there's neither painful nor pleasant. Neither painful nor pleasant are, I've got boredom and loneliness here, but some people say that's very painful for them. So you could put that in the painful category if you'd like. But maybe shyness is a good example for you. It's not painful. It's not pleasant. It's neither painful nor pleasant. Maybe if you were on public transportation and somebody you didn't know came in and sat next to you on the bus and your body was touching their body, you'd probably say, it's not painful. It's not pleasant. Your mind's kind of like dissatisfied in that situation, right? So these are the three feelings that the unenlightened mind is going to experience. Pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. And it's based on some condition. So for example, the unenlightened mind will wake up in the morning in the unenlightened state. We'll see it's sunny outside. We'll get so happy. It's like, oh my gosh, it's sunny. There's this hiking trail that I've been wanting to go on. And now I can go outside and I can go hiking. Oh my gosh, this is going to be so fun. I'm going to call all my friends. I can't wait to go hiking, right? Now you get so excited. Then you go take a shower. And you finish your shower and 30 minutes later you come out and you see it's raining. And you're like, oh, it's raining. I can't go outside. And now you're frustrated and annoyed. These are because of conditioned feelings. That as long as you base your inner feelings on some condition, then that means your feelings are not permanent because that object is not permanent, right? This is what the unenlightened mind is experiencing. It's shaken up. It's unsteady. It's uncalm. It's going up and down and up and down and up and down. It's only a matter of time before the unenlightened mind gets annoyed or frustrated or agitated about something. It's only a matter of time. An enlightened being doesn't experience this. Their mind is beyond this. Their mind is experiencing unconditioned mental states where the mind is just always peaceful. It's always joyful. It's always uplifted. There doesn't need to be any condition met in order for you to experience that. So for example, an enlightened being, when they wake up in the morning, they're already happy, right? And now they go and see it's sunny outside. It's like, sweet, it's sunny outside. I'm going to go hiking today. Been interested in going on that trail for a long time. I'm going to call my friends. This is going to be a blast. Oh man, this is going to be great. And now you go take a shower and you come out and it's raining. And it's like, it's raining. Well, guess I'm not going hiking today. I guess I'll stay home and maybe read a book, or I'll go to the mall and spend time with some friends, or maybe I'll invite my friends over and we can cook and then I'll have some food and we'll enjoy our time here, right? You can maintain your happiness because your happiness wasn't based on the sun. So that means when the sun's gone, you're still happy. So you're beyond the happiness of conditional happiness. You're not experiencing conditional happiness. You're experiencing unconditional happiness, where the mind can just be happy at all times. And there doesn't need to be any condition met in order for that happiness to be there. So in the unenlightened state, it's kind of like this has to be true and this has to be true. My mom and dad does this. My brothers and sisters do this. My boss does this. The weather is this. I have this kind of house and this kind of car. I have this much money in the bank account. Then I'll be happy. Right? It's conditional. So that means your happiness is shrinking more and more. You're sabotaging your ability to be happy permanently because all these conditions have to be met in order for you to be happy. The enlightened mind is beyond that. It can be happy no matter what. Raining, snowing, sun, bank accounts here, there, it doesn't matter. You can just maintain your happiness because your happiness isn't based on external things. So some people refer to this as suffering. I don't refer to it that way. The Buddha here is helping you to be able to understand the unenlightened mind. And remember, you can't believe anything. So far, I just gave you the intellectual understanding of what this is. But now don't believe it. Reflect on it. You know that your mind's unenlightened, and the Buddha is describing what the unenlightened mind is experiencing. Is this what you experience? Are there any feelings that you experience that don't fit into one of these three categories? And when we get to the question period, if there is, just let me know and we'll talk about it, right? So you should be able to see that your feelings fit into each one of these three categories. And if there's a feeling you think that doesn't fit into here, let me know and we'll talk about it, okay? So some people refer to this as suffering. I don't refer to it that way because the word suffering describes the painful feelings really well. When you're angry, when you're sad, when you're frustrated, you probably say you're suffering. But if your boss came into your office and said, you are doing an outstanding job, I would like to give you $100,000 a year more in your paycheck every year, and you got really excited about that, would you say you were suffering? Probably not, right? Or say that person you don't know comes and sits really close to you on the bus and your body's touching their body. Would you say you were suffering in that situation? Probably not, right? So if you use the word suffering, you're only understanding 33% of what the Buddha taught. You're not fully understanding everything the Buddha taught here. You're missing 66% of his teachings. So how could you ever get to the goal if you're missing 66% of his teachings? So ultimately, you need to be able to see that these conditioned pleasant feelings are just as much a part of the problem as the painful ones. If you allow your mind to get conditional pleasant feelings, the painful ones are waiting for you right around the corner. So for example, if I got really happy and excited because I got a brand new job, right? Even though I'm not in the workforce, I'm just giving you guys an example, right? So if I get so excited, brand new company, brand new title, brand new salary, brand new office, perfect coworkers, perfect mission. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to go to that job. I'm so excited about this new job. 3 years later, when they go out of business and they have to lay you off, you'll be angry. You'll be frustrated. So if you allow your mind to get the conditioned pleasant feelings, then the painful ones are going to wait for you right around the corner. What the Buddha is teaching you to do is get to unconditioned happiness, where you can be happy if you're working at that job or any other job too, right? But if you can only be happy working at this job, that means your happiness is conditional. It's very limited. The Buddha is helping you to be able to open that up where you can be happy if it's sunny, if it's raining, if it's snowing, if your bank account balance is here or here, if you're working at this job or that job or this job or that job, you can still be happy, right? But if you allow your mind to get conditional happiness, that condition is not permanent. This is why you haven't been able to get to permanent happiness, because your mind is basing its inner feelings on some condition. And you usually get the excited feelings at the beginning. And then as things change, your mind ends up in the painful feelings. I'm going to explain to you why here in a moment. But this universal truth is just helping you to understand what your mind's doing. And it's called discontentedness, where your mind is shaken up. It's unsteady. It's uncalm. Okay, so here, this is the second universal truth, and you can independently verify this. Then there's the third universal truth, which I'll just introduce it to you here. You actually don't need this in order to understand the Four Noble Truths, but it's best to just teach it here. This is actually the solution to one of the problems that the Buddha discovered in the mind. Remember, there's those 10 pollutions. They're called the 10 fetters. Those fetters is like the shackle and the chain around the ankle. That's what you're working to uproot and eliminate, these pollutions out of the mind. The very first pollution, this is the solution to that. So let me explain to you the pollution first so you can understand the problem. Then I'll explain to you the solution. The problem, the first fetter, is called personal existence view. What this is where your mind is clinging to the body and or the mind, thinking that this is who you are as a person. You cling to your self-image and your self-identity, how you want to be perceived by others. And if you're being perceived the way you want to be perceived, you'll be happy about that. But if you're not being perceived the way you want to be perceived, you'll be angry or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. So for example, if you've ever been in a social situation and you spilled something on your clothing and you were embarrassed by that, that was your personal existence view. That as long as your clothes are clean, you're being perceived the way you want to be perceived by others, and you're happy about that. But then as soon as you spill spaghetti sauce or chocolate ice cream on your clothes, you're not being perceived the way you want to be perceived. Maybe you think, oh, they're going to think I'm a slob. And now your mind doesn't like that, and you're embarrassed by that. That's you clinging to your self-image, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way, confused, thinking that this body is who you are. Or you might have looked in the mirror and you saw a wrinkle or a pimple or a mole, or you started noticing you have gray hair, or you started losing your hair, and you were shaken up by that. That's your personal existence view, thinking that this body is who you are, and you can only be comfortable if you're being perceived the way you want to be perceived. Or maybe you stood in front of your closet and you thought, who am I going to see today, and how do I want to look? And maybe you put on a certain set of clothes and you looked in the mirror, and you're like, no, that's not it. I can't go outside like that. And you put on another set. No, I can't go outside like that. Put on a third set. You're like, all right, now I feel comfortable to go outside. This is personal existence view. If you were like me when I was a teenager, I used to get out the gel and the mousse and I would run it through my hair before going to school. I tried to get every little hair in exactly the right spot, and I couldn't go outside to go to school until every little hair was in exactly the right spot. And sometimes I would do this for so long, I would miss the school bus on the way to school. Right? So this is personal existence view, clinging to this self-image and wanting others to perceive you a certain way and only feeling comfortable when they perceive you that way. And then there's the self-identity. Your self-identity is based on things like your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation. Your mind can cling to any number of these things as who you think you are, like I am Brazilian, or I am American, or I am Chinese, or I am Lithuanian, or I am anything, I am Indian, right? You can cling to any number of things about your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation, thinking that this is who you are as a person. And now you can only feel comfortable when those things are being experienced in a certain way. So for example, if you've been together in a boyfriend or girlfriend relationship or a husband or wife, when you guys were together, your mind might have identified with, I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend, I am a husband, I'm a wife. And when you guys were together, there was a certain amount of comfort there. But when you guys broke up, you might not have felt comfortable with, I am single, because your mind identified with, I am a boyfriend, I'm a girlfriend. And I'm a husband, I'm a wife. And now this I am single, the mind isn't comfortable with that. And you might have felt like the way to solve it is to hurry up and get right back into another relationship, right? Or say you had, say you're at a restaurant and 2 tables over, somebody says, all Americans are lovely and warm and kind and gentle. I've never heard this before, but maybe this could actually happen at some point, right? Somebody might actually say that. And if you think that I am American, now you're like, wow, they're talking about me, and you get all these pleasant feelings. But then it's only a matter of time because of impermanence. 2 tables over, somebody's going to say something degrading and disparaging about the ethnicity or your nationality or whatever it is that you're holding in your mind. And now you're angry or frustrated about that, right? Or say you had a job or occupation, like say you thought, I am a police officer, right? And now you're doing that job, maybe 10, 15, 20 years. You feel really great. But now you get to the point where you have an injury and you can't do that job anymore. Or maybe you retire, or maybe you get fired. Now you're driving a taxi, but your mind is identifying with, I am a police officer. And now you're disgruntled and frustrated because that identity that you're holding in your mind, that I am a police officer, it's no longer intact because you're driving a taxi. And now you feel like less of a person. You feel unwhole. You feel diminished as an individual. So your mind can cling to any number of things as who you think you are as a person. In fact, some people get this so bad that they will go to their family in their home country and they will say, Mom, Dad, I need to leave. I need to go find myself. I don't even know who I am anymore. I need to go find my true self. And they might come to a place like Thailand trying to find themselves, but they're not going to find themselves here. They might have find a new job, new hobbies, new activities. They might find new friends or things like this, but none of that stuff is you. It's not who you are. And as soon as you cling to it, thinking that that's who you are, as soon as it changes, you'll be right back in the same problem again. So someone might be here for 6 months or a year, and then they go home and they're like, Mom and Dad, I feel so great. I found myself. I know who I am again. They haven't found themselves. Because what the Buddha is teaching you as part of this universal truth is there is no self. As soon as you try to cling to any of this as who you think you are, then you can only be happy when those things are intact. And as soon as it all changes, and it will change because of impermanence, you're right back in the same problem again. So this is a little bit on the universal truth of non-self. Some people actually understand it when I first start talking about it. Some people don't. And no matter what category you're in, it's okay because there's a lot more learning here on this particular universal truth. But even at this early stage, even if you don't understand it 100%, you can independently verify that there is no self. I'll show you guys how to do that. Think about yourself when you were a child, teenager, early adulthood, and now. Think about how you viewed yourself, your personality, your character. Has it been exactly the same through all those 4 phases of your life, or has it been changing? It's been changing, right? So this is one way to see that there is no self. Here's another way. If your arm was amputated, if it was cut off at your shoulder, and you only have one hand and one arm, are you less of a person? You only have one hand and one arm. Are you less of a person? Shaking your head no. Saying no. You're not less of a person, right? So you can see intellectually, you understand this body is not you. Because otherwise you'd answer that question differently. You'd be like, hold on a second, there's less body, so there's less me. So yeah, I'm less of a person. But hardly anybody ever answers it that way, right? So you can see intellectually, understand this body's not you. But in the heat of the moment, when someone's like, wow, you're so handsome, you're so beautiful, that shirt really brings out the colors of your eyes. You're like, whoa, they're talking about me, right? You get all conceited. You're like, wow, they're talking about me. Because your mind's confused in that moment. You think that this body is you. Because it's only a matter of time before someone says, where did you get that haircut? Are you going outside looking like that? And now you're angry, you're frustrated, right? That's the confusion that the mind has because of its pollution. It thinks that this body is you, but intellectually you understand it's not. But the pollution of the mind makes it shaken up. Now here's a third way that you can verify this. Point to yourself. Where are you? Can you point to yourself? She's pointing there. That's a common place. Yep. Usually people will point here or here, right? So if you're pointing here and you're saying, I am here, you've got to look at what you're pointing to. You're pointing to a shirt, right? Ask yourself, is that who you are? That shirt you're wearing. Like if we took off our shirt and we held it up and we pointed to it, is that you? Is that who you are? That shirt that you're wearing? That's not you, right? So we throw it away. Where are you? And someone might point again. Well, now what are we pointing to? We're pointing to skin. Ask yourself, is that who you are? That skin that you've got, is that you? If we were able to rip that off and hold it up and point to it, is that you? That skin you've got? That's not you, right? So we throw that away. Where are you? And then someone might point again. Well, what are we pointing to? We're pointing to bones. We're pointing to muscle tissue, organs, fluid, all these kinds of things. None of these bits and pieces and parts are you, but the mind is going to cling to this, thinking that this is who you are as a person. And now you're going to experience agreeable contact where someone says, wow, you're so beautiful, you're so handsome. You're going to get pleasant feelings. But then it's only a matter of time before someone says, where did you get that haircut? Did you realize you have a big pimple on your nose? Right? And now you're upset. Now you're frustrated. Now you're embarrassed. Right? This is what personal existence view does. The solution is to realize non-self, to realize that this body is not you and this mind is not you. This is part of the training where you're not clinging to it and holding on to it, wanting it to be permanent, understanding that it's constantly changing, but also you're not on the other side too, where you could care less about this body because you've got to maintain the health of this body, right? So you need to be able to come to the middle where you don't grab onto it and cling to it to want it to be permanent. There's more on that though, but I'm going to stop here and see if you guys have any questions on any of these. Anything you guys would like to ask?
Yeah. Um, Thank you for sharing. So, is part of the process like applying these perspectives in our day-to-day life? Like, let's say I've verified that these are all truths independently, and so is the next part of it carrying this perspective in the different situations I face during life. Like, for example, when somebody comments about how I look physically, reminding myself, if you will, that there is no permanent self and the body is constantly changing.
Yes, that's part of it, but that's not the entire thing. There's multiple facets to the training because there's proactive things that you can do to train your mind to not identify with this as who you are. But then there's in the moment, because when someone says something, you're going to notice conditioned feelings arise and there's ways for you to deal with that. That's what more of the teachings are going to help you. So the short answer is yes, but there's more than just that. Mm-hmm.
Just coming back to the self problem, and trying to connect what I was asking to you before. So, in a concrete situation, if a person is black, for example, right? So their skin is black, and they face the problems of a black person, right? And then if they delude themselves or they not don't identify anymore as a black person, how come they will try and find a better place to his collective as black people, that talking about like the struggles and collective fights. If I see myself as non-self as one thing with everyone, but I'm still struggling and facing different challenges than white people, and so how that for me is a bit confusing.
Yeah, this is where you cultivate wisdom and you make wise decisions about what it is that you would like to be able to do in the world. So, for example, if you were being discriminated against because of the color of your skin, there's different options here, right? The Buddha's not teaching you what you should or shouldn't be doing in these situations, because that would be like a decision tree, that if this happens, do that. And if this happens, do that. That's like a permanent answer for every situation. Instead, he's teaching you how to get rid of the pollution of your mind and make wise decisions. But as long as you cling to the idea of I am this, I am Caucasian, I don't usually use this term, but I am black, or I am this, I am that, you will have a certain feelings about that in your mind. And now it will hinder you from being able to go into a situation and just perform well, right? Like you might go into a job interview thinking like, oh, I am of this ethnicity, and this company is never going to hire somebody of this ethnicity. And now you go there and your mind's all shaken up because you're frustrated, you're embarrassed, you're angry, you're disappointed, you're having all these emotions that are circulating in your mind and having difficulties, instead of just going there and performing and not being able to necessarily associate who you are as a person based on the color of your skin. And this is what will help you to get to peace and joy and making wise decisions, and then experiencing wholesome results in your life.
Yes. Just the only thing that I didn't quite understand is when it is concrete, the suffering. Like I am, as an immigrant, as a Latino living in Australia, I feel the racism in the people's eyes when they come, and I do face the racism. It's not something that I just feel. When I go to an interview, they might not hire me because I'm Latino. And
so this is where you've got to understand more deeply. There's multiple things here. First, you can't cling to a perception. I understand what you're saying, because I've been in these same situations too, as what people would call a Caucasian person. I've been in situations where I've been discriminated against as well, right? So you got to be careful that when you go into any given situation, that you don't allow that look on someone's face, or the way they gesture, or the way that they're talking, to form the perception that they are racist, because oftentimes that's just your own mind telling you a story that isn't actually true. But of course, you can actually see real situations where people are definitely discriminated against based on the decisions that are being made and how people are interacting and so forth. And in that situation, you've got to decide, well, what would I like to do here? Would I like to try to address this and move forward, or would I like to maybe leave and go to another company because I'm not interested in working at this place anyway? They're so, discriminatory, right? But what the Buddha is teaching you is not necessarily whether you work for that company or not. He's teaching you how to remain calm, and teaching you how to train your mind to not associate with this as who you are as a person, because now you can walk very confidently into that company, do your job interview, and then you either do really well and they're going to hire you, or if they discriminate against you and decide that they're not going to hire you because of that, you're probably like, well, I didn't want to work there anyway because I didn't realize that this kind of stuff was going on there. And now you just go find yourself a job where people that are going to be accepting, and you can work with them and be much more successful. But if you identify with this as who you are, you won't be able to go in there confidently and have that job interview. So that's what the Buddha is teaching you to be able to do.
Just a quick one. So does it mean you do not have self-identity, or does it mean you should not identify yourself as something? So all the habits you take into your life, all beliefs you have, do you have to discourage that and don't have a self-identity? Because I believe you grow and learn and you develop and you kind of have the wisdom because of all your past experience, and it's made you as a person you are now. So this is self-identity.
You can have that wisdom of the things you experienced in your life without identifying with that as who you are as a person. So for example, this body was born on a land that most people refer to as America or the USA. Right? I know that this body was born on that land physically, but my mind doesn't have to identify with I am American, right? If someone says all Americans are lovely and kind, okay. If someone says all Americans are hateful and, arrogant, and Okay, they're not talking about me because my mind doesn't identify that way, right? So I can understand this country of America and what I experienced growing up within that environment without allowing my mind to identify with that as who I am as a person. Here's another example. Right now, I'm functioning in the role of a Buddhist teacher. And someone might say, that's a Buddhist teacher. And someone might ask me, are you a Buddhist teacher? Well, I understand I'm performing the role of being a Buddhist teacher, and I'll do this for the rest of my life, but my mind doesn't identify that way. I don't identify with I am a Buddhist teacher. Because some people are going to say very fond things about Buddhist teachers. Some people are going to say things very degrading and disparaging, right? So if I allow my mind to hold on to this as who I am as a person, now my mind's going to go up and down based on what I hear. Over here, I'm going to get pleasant feelings, and over here, I'm going to get painful feelings. But if I just understand, like, hey, I can perform this role of sharing the teachings of the Buddha without allowing my mind to identify this way. That's what it means by realizing non-self. That, yes, by the time you get to enlightenment, you won't have a belief about who you are as a person. You'll just know that there's a human being here. You've had multiple experiences and you've cultivated wisdom, but you won't be grabbing onto it as who you are. Let me give you one other example so you guys can see how this works. I had a student one time contact me shortly after COVID, and he said, David, I need your help. And I said, okay, what's going on? He said, ever since COVID, I've been having a lot of issues going into various places that I never used to have issues before. And I was like, well, really, what's happening? He said, well, before COVID, I used to go to places like a coffee shop, and I would order my drink and I would give them the cash, or I'd give them my credit card, and they would process the payment. It took all of 30 seconds, and I would get my coffee and I'd be on my way. No big deal. But now, since COVID, they turn around their computer screen and I have to tap my card because of contactless payment. And when I tap my card, the computer screen says tip 15%, 20%, 25%. And he says, I have a real difficult time in this situation because I don't tip in this situation. And I don't think I have to tip. And I've never tipped before. But I want you to know, David, I am a great tipper. I'm a great tipper, David. Wherever I go, I always tip. But in this situation, I don't tip, and I feel uncomfortable, and I don't understand why. And I said, this is your personal existence view. Your mind is clinging to the idea of I am a great tipper. And when you're tipping, you feel really comfortable and you feel fine. But when you're not tipping, your mind doesn't like that, and it feels uncomfortable. So this is a situation where you can understand that tipping is not permanent. In some situations, you'll tip. In some situations, you won't. But if you identify with I am a great tipper, now you're going to feel comfortable here, but you're not going to feel comfortable over here, right? So that's why by shedding all of this, you can just understand that it's wise to tip occasionally. You might decide to tip, but you're not going to be able to tip all the time. It's not possible. So you guys are going to see with the Four Noble Truths, what the mind's doing is it's craving permanence while it lives in an impermanent world. Mm-hmm.
So in a deeper level, is that so I understand the no permanent self, but can I say that it's something with you, it's like permanent in your soul or in your spirit or whatever? Like, can I say that I bring something from this life to my next life, for example? Is that like something that makes you unique? And then you bring that with you? Or no, like my next life, I'll be a completely different soul or spirit?
We don't have any independently verifiable evidence that there is a soul or that there isn't a soul. So the Buddha left this as an undeclared teaching. He never declared whether there is a soul or there isn't a soul. So even this term that we're using, the cycle of rebirth, it's actually not the best term to use. In the original Pali Canon, the word samsara is being used, and most people translate that as the cycle of rebirth. But if you look at what the Buddha is teaching, he's talking about a brand new body and a brand new mind every single time. It's really the cycle of new existence, because it's a new existence every single time. So there's really nothing that's actually being reborn, because it's a brand new body and a brand new mind. But that's a whole nother topic, but it kind of relates to what you're describing, is that the mind in the unenlightened state wants to grab onto something as who you are. It wants to grab something and say, this is who I am. And the Buddha's explained to you that that doesn't exist. That as long as you try to grab onto something and you say, this is who I am, as soon as that changes, you're going to be lost and confused, right? So the mind's going to keep looking for something, though, because sometimes you guys haven't asked this question, but when I teach people that there is no self, they say, okay, well, if I'm not the body and I'm not the mind, then what am I? This is the mind still grasping. It's still trying to grab something and say, this is who I am. And it tries to hold on to it. But then as soon as that changes, you're lost and confused again. So you've got to get to the point, and it takes training. This is just an introduction to this teaching, but there's training behind all of this that helps you to get to this point where your mind now understands, this body is not me. This mind is not me. But of course, you take care of it. But you understand that you've grown up in a certain place, and you'll appreciate that place that you grew up in. You'll appreciate the ethnicity that you come from. You'll appreciate the culture and the heritage. But your mind's just not grabbing onto it as who you are as a person. Because now you can be free. Because if somebody says, all Latinos are lovely and kind and warm, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I can see why they would say that. But then it's only a matter of time before someone says something degrading and disparaging. And now you're like, yeah, they're not talking about me, because that's not who I am. Sure, I grew up in that culture, and I value that culture, and I appreciate that culture. And I've learned many things from that culture, but I don't have to grab onto it as who I am as a person. That's what the Buddha is teaching you. Mm-hmm. Making more sense now?
Just one more question. So what about self-improvement then?
Well, what you're doing is you're doing this inner work, this inner growth, this inner development. You're working on the mind. You're not working on the self, because there is no self here. You're working on the mind. That's what you're doing. You're training the mind. They're doing this inner growth, this inner development. And this being is becoming a better being as a result of improving the mind, the CPU of the computer. Mm-hmm.
Hi, David.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I understand that there is no permanent self, and also to not have the identity, which is shedding that self. How about, because the identity has already built a life that's around that identity, which you then have to shed. And as you go on shedding that, but you are still continuing to do the work, the culture, the beliefs that old self has. So how do you actually go through that process of shedding while you actually still have that attachment to that old self, if you get what I mean?
Yeah, there's certain proactive training, and I'm leaving all of this out because it's actually in chapter 16 in this book, but it's in chapter 16 for a reason. What you're studying now is in chapter 4, right? So you need to be able to build your practice slowly but surely, and you don't have all the tools right now to talk about how to get rid of this personal existence view. Right now, we're talking about the problem, which is personal existence view. We talked about the solution, which is to realize non-self. But how to actually do that, I'm leaving that out of this introduction course. But when you go into deeper courses with me and retreats, then I teach you guys how to do that. One of the challenges that the mind has in the unenlightened state with this universal truth of non-self is we've spent so much time accumulating a self from the moment we were born, right? Every single one of us were given a label. I don't know all of your labels, but mine's David. Right. And then we start having personality and character and all this other stuff that we assign to it. Even our countries, depending on what country you come from, you probably have a flag, you have a national anthem, you have sports teams. And it's like, I am American. I'm supposed to cheer for the American team because I am American. So all throughout our life, our mind has been conditioned to think that this is who we are. Right. And now we've taken on all this conditioning. And what the Buddha is teaching you how to do is how to strip that all away. And that's what you'll get to when you see the solutions of actually the techniques of how to do it. But now we're just talking about the theory of it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you guys ready to move on? Okay, so one more little building block before we study the Four Noble Truths. This is craving, desire, attachment, wants, and expectations. This is the mind clinging, grasping, or holding. This is the way the mind longs and yearns for something, thinking that something external is going to provide lasting satisfaction, so the mind chases after it. The mind pulls in the direction of the objects of its affection. It's not the object itself. It's the way the mind pulls towards the object. It's almost like the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some lasting satisfaction. So the mind chases it and chases it and chases it and chases it. We were talking about this earlier. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Like, have you ever been in the mall and you've been like, oh, new pair of shoes. Oh, I just can't wait to get those on my feet. Or new video game, new jewelry, new mobile phone. Oh, I just can't wait to get that thing. The craving, desire, attachment isn't the thing. It isn't the object. It's the way that the mind longs and yearns for it. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Okay. You guys experienced this before? All right. Okay. So now we've got everything we need to help you guys understand the problem in the mind, the cause, the elimination, and the path forward. This is the Four Noble Truths. The first noble truth is explaining to you the problem. Everyone that is in the unenlightened state will experience discontentedness. This is the problem that you're experiencing. The discontentedness, the conditioned feelings, the conditioned pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant. The mind is shaken up. It's unsteady. It's uncalm, right? This is the problem. Because now when your mind's all shaken up like that, you can't make wise decisions, and it's producing unwholesome results for you in your day-to-day life. So this is the problem that each unenlightened being is experiencing. The second noble truth is explaining the cause of this problem. Discontentedness is caused by our own cravings, desires, attachments, because the mind wants everything to be permanent when everything in the world is impermanent. I'm going to say that a few times and give you some examples. The discontentedness, the pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and the neither painful nor pleasant, it's being caused by the craving, the desire, the longing, the yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection, because the mind wants things to be permanent when in reality, everything around you is impermanent. So here's some examples for you. Think back to a boyfriend or girlfriend that you got together with. When you guys first got together, you were probably so happy, so excited. This new person is showing up in your life, and now they're calling you. They're checking in on you. They're sending you text messages. They're inviting you to dinner, to the movies. You're going to the park, having nice walks together. You're having great conversations. You're maybe even having intimate contact together, and you're getting all these pleasant feelings from this. But then over time, the relationship deteriorates and you guys break up. And now you're angry. You're frustrated. Maybe you're lonely or bored, or you're missing this person. It's not your love that's causing this. That's oftentimes what people think. What it is your mind's craving permanence, wanting this person to be in your life permanently, when in reality, they were always impermanent. Even if you guys were together for the rest of your life, you guys were going to die at some point, and now they're not in your life anymore. So the mind's holding on and craving permanence while everything around you is constantly changing. Say you've been maybe in an experience where you've had someone close to you that has died, like grandma or grandpa, mom or dad, brothers or sisters. You're not a bad person, of course, if you grieved or you had sorrow or sadness when this was occurring. But it wasn't your love that was causing that, because love is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. What caused the sadness and the grief is that the mind was holding on. It could only be happy if it got what it wanted. When you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings. When you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings. So when grandma and grandpa's alive, you're getting what you want, and you're happy about that. But when the mind is experiencing impermanence, when it's experiencing change, it doesn't like that. It doesn't understand that the world is impermanent. So now when your mom or your dad or your brothers or sisters or grandma or grandpa die, your mind is holding on and craving permanence, but yet they are impermanent. There's only one reason why they died. It's because they were born. They had to die. That's the only reason. Every single one of us are going to experience this. You might have seen this at a wedding. If you've ever been to a wedding and someone's getting married, people might have been grieving at a wedding. It's not love, because if it's love, it's like, oh, this person's getting married. That's wonderful. They're starting a new life, a new relationship. Hey, that's so great for them, right? But no, mom and dad, brothers and sisters, that's my brother. That's my sister. How dare you take them away from me, right? The mind is holding on, is craving permanence. You can see this if you have ever remembered when you got dropped off at school as a child, right? Maybe your parents were crying. Or maybe you've dropped children off at school and you were crying, or the child was crying. Again, it's not love, because that's wonderful. A child's going off into the world. They're getting an education. That's wonderful. But no, mom and dad are crying. The child's crying because they're holding on and they're craving permanence. Okay? So let me give you some other examples that don't involve relationships. You might actually be able to see this better. Think if you got a brand new car. You've been saving up for this car your whole life, right? Maybe 10 years, 15 years, your dream car. You just can't wait to get this car. You've been putting money under your mattress and you finally got enough money. And you go down to the car dealership and you give them all your money. You get the keys to your car. You get in your car, you drive off the parking lot. Everyone's waving at you like, wow, look at him. He's so successful. Wow, look at her. She's so successful. And you're just so proud driving your nice car. And you park it at a store. You go inside and you come out and there's a scratch on your car. Oh my gosh, you might be crushed. You might be so angry and frustrated. You've been saving for this car for 15 years. It's not the scratch that's causing your anger. It's not the person who scratched your car. That's not what's causing your anger. Now, we're not talking about what's wise or unwise, because when we go through a parking lot, we aspire not to scratch anybody's car. But what's causing the anger here is the craving for permanence. The mind wants this car to be permanently beautiful, where it's not possible. This car is going to deteriorate. It is impermanent. The paint's going to fade. The tires are going to need to be changed. The upholstery is going to get ripped and torn. It's only a matter of time before we experience change with this car. But if your mind's craving permanence, when you experience this impermanence, your mind doesn't like it. It gets angry, it gets frustrated. So one of the ways to say this is that the mind craves permanence while you live in an impermanent world. Another way to say it is that the mind does not like impermanence. It doesn't like change. That's why if you look at your life, whenever things were changing for you, that were the biggest challenges, the biggest struggles in your life. When you were changing jobs, when you were changing living locations, when you were changing relationships, that was very difficult for you as you were making those changes, right? So you need to be able to see this for yourself. Remember, you can't believe anything that I share. So that was the intellectual part right there, where I was sharing with you that your mind craves permanence. It's holding on while you live in an impermanent world. But now take it into reflection. I'd like to invite you to take a moment to think about a recent time when you've been angry or sad or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. It could have been this morning or yesterday or last week. Look at that situation. Look at it with these fresh eyes. Because what you might have been doing at the time is trying to blame somebody else, or you might have been pushing people away, you might have been bitter, harsh, and hostile, or you might have put expectations on people. But look at it with these fresh eyes. What was it that you wanted? What did you expect? What were you longing, yearning for? And if you would have gotten it, you would have been happy. But because you didn't get what you wanted or expected, you got angry or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. And if you can see this, you can have a real breakthrough. And if you can't, let me know, because I will help you when we get to the question period. I've had plenty of students that needed help. I'll give you one situation. I had a student contact me one time and they said, David, I need to talk to you. And I said, okay, what's going on? They said, David, I know that you teach that it's my own mind that's causing these feelings, but I'm sure it's my wife. And I said, okay, what's going on? They said, well, I went to work the other day and my house looked beautiful. And when I came home, my wife had this craft project all over the house. And when I walked in, I got frustrated right away. How did I cause this? Didn't she cause me to be angry? She's the one who messed up the house. And I said, no, it was your own mind. You were craving permanence. That when you went to work, your house looked a certain way. And when you came home, it just looks a different way now. But you expected it to look exactly the same. That's what the unenlightened mind is doing, is it's craving permanence. And it can only be happy if it gets what it wants and what it expects. The only thing that's happened here is change, right? When it goes from sun to rain and someone gets frustrated, the only thing that's happened is change. When your bank account balance goes from here to here, the only thing that's happened is change. That's it. You can see there's no other person involved here, because oftentimes what the mind does is it firmly believes that other people are causing you to experience these feelings. But it's just the mind craving permanence. That's all it is. That the mind craves permanence when you live in an impermanent world, and the mind lacks wisdom of this. So if you can take a situation from your own life and you can see it, this is the breakthrough. And this is where it gets really good. Because if you can see that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, that means you can eliminate it. Because if it's everybody else that's causing these feelings, you can't fix it. You can't change other people. It's not possible. But this is very empowering. It's not about blame or fault. It's none of that. It's not about any of that stuff. It's about just being able to see true reality of what's really occurring. Because if you can see that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings in the second noble truth, well, the third noble truth is beautiful, because it tells you that you can actually eliminate your discontentedness by eliminating craving, desire, attachment, where your mind's not longing, yearning, and chasing after things. But sometimes when I say that, people say, well, if I'm not doing that, won't my mind swing to the other side where I'm dull and lethargic and lazy and complacent? Well, it might, but that's not what the Buddha is teaching you. He's teaching you to come to the middle, where you can gradually pursue your goals, objectives, or interests. But right now, if you have a goal and you get happy when you get it, and you get sad and frustrated when you don't get it, that's not a goal. That's a craving, desire, attachment. That's the mind longing, yearning. So there's a middle way here where you can eliminate this longing, yearning, and you can just gradually pursue your goals, objectives, or interests with enthusiasm, with ambition, with motivation. And you can independently verify this too, that when you eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments, that you eliminate your discontentedness. Because think back to that boyfriend or girlfriend that you broke up with, and you were angry or frustrated or lonely or bored or missing this person. At some point, your mind let go, because that's what the Buddha is teaching you, is to train your mind to let go. At some point, you let go. You were like, you know what? If he wants to be with someone else, so be it. And your mind let go. And that's where your peace and your joy came back. Or you were like, you know what? If she wants to live in a different part of the world, so be it. And you let go. And that's where your peace and your joy came back. But your mind doesn't know how to let go. But that's what it needs to do. It needs to learn how to let go. So the fourth noble truth is explaining to you the path to eliminating discontentedness is the Eightfold Path. This is the complete perfect plan that's going to guide you in how to train your mind to let go. And it starts with right view, which is what I'm teaching you right now. Right view is to understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, that it's craving, desire, attachment. Wrong view would be to blame other people. As long as you're blaming other people for these feelings, you'll never fix it, because it's everyone else's the problem, right? But if you understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, now you can actually apply the real solution to the real problem, and you can actually experience real results or real transformation. So by having right view, what you do now and forever is you start looking inward. You start looking inward to see, what is your mind longing, yearning for? What are you craving? So like say that you check in at an airport and you think your flight's leaving in about an hour and you're ready to check in and you've got your bags there and you walk up to the counter, hand them your passport, and they say, sorry, you can't check in yet. Your flight's not leaving for 3 hours. And you're like, whoa, because you thought you were leaving in an hour. And you notice this anger coming up in your mind. Instead of sitting in the waiting room, being disgruntled and angry and blaming the airline company and all this other stuff, start looking inward. What are you longing, yearning for? What are you craving? Oh, that mango and sticky rice in Thailand. That's what I want. Those elephants that I was going to play with. I'm longing, yearning for that. Oh, the massages. That's what it is. My mind's longing, yearning for that stuff. And now, because it's longing, yearning, it's not getting what it wants. So therefore, the anger is arising. Because if you travel enough, you're going to meet with delays because of impermanence, right? There's going to be a weather issue. There's going to be a maintenance issue with the plane, or there's going to be a crew issue. Maybe someone's sick and they didn't show up for work. If you travel enough, you're going to meet with a delay. It's only a matter of time because of impermanence. But with your mind craving permanence, your mind's going to want every airplane to take off on time. Well, at least the ones you're on, right? Everyone else's plane can be late. You don't mind that, but you want my plane's got to be on time, right? So that's the craving for permanence. So if you have right view, you will start looking inward instead of blaming others. So this is why sometimes students contact me and they're like, David, I can't see why my mind is experiencing this. Can you help me? And I help you to develop this skill. And eventually you'll be able to figure this out on your own. You'll be able to look inward and be able to see it every single time, how your mind is longing, yearning. So I'm sure you've been in knockdown, drag out arguments where you've been bitterly fighting with people, trying to convince them that they have to stop doing what they're doing or else you're going to continue to get angry. I'm sure you've done that. But every single time your entire life that you've ever been angry or frustrated, it's been your entire mind the whole time. It doesn't mean that the other person wasn't doing something that was unwise, because they could have been doing something that was unwise, but your mind's craving for everyone to do it this way. And you can only be happy if they do it this way. Think back to when we were children. Mommy and Daddy, can I have chocolate and ice cream? Sure, you can have chocolate and ice cream. Here you go. Thank you, Mommy and Daddy. You're the best Mommy and Daddy ever. And then the second day comes around. Mommy and Daddy, can I have chocolate and ice cream? Sure, here you go. Here's your chocolate and ice cream. Thank you, Mommy and Daddy. You're so nice. It's such a great day. I've got chocolate and ice cream. And then the third day comes around. Mommy and Daddy, can I have chocolate and ice cream? No. You're the worst Mommy and Daddy ever. That's the craving. The mind can only be happy when it gets what it wants and what it expects. It thought that chocolate and ice cream was going to be an everyday thing, right? And you could only be happy if you got that chocolate and ice cream. But when your mind doesn't get what it wants, it gets angry or frustrated. It's craving permanence. Even when we were inside the womb, right? When we were inside our mom's womb, we were having a good old time. We had, unless you were a twin, you had the whole place to yourself. Right? You had your food being pumped in, right? You're just hanging out in there. It's like, wow, this place is great. Wow, I like it in here. This is nice. And then next thing you know, here comes a bunch of impermanence. You got to come out into the world, right? You're being born out into the world, or maybe there's surgery and they're bringing you out into the world. What do we do right away? Because we're craving permanence. We thought that was permanent in there. Right? So ever since you were born, your mind's been craving this permanence, but we just didn't have enough wisdom to be able to see it. And that's what a Buddha does, is they figured this out. And now he shares it with you so you can independently verify it. And that's why you don't believe any of this stuff. You've got to see it for yourself. And now once you see it, and then he's going to teach you through all of these other factors, which, by the way, it doesn't take as long to teach each one of these, but it does take about 2.5 hours to teach this whole teaching. I'm going to be teaching it on Tuesday because next week, Monday through Friday, I have a course where I'm going to be teaching here Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And I'm going to be teaching this on Tuesday morning. We're going to walk through the entire thing and teaching you the entire path. So this is what I have to share with you guys. Let me pause here and see if you guys have questions, particularly on this second noble truth. Because if you can penetrate into this and see your own mind is causing these feelings, life can get very, very good for you. Because now you can apply the solution and actually fix it. Any questions here? Yes, ma'am. Could you use a microphone? That way the people online can hear you.
Why? The third noble truth accept we should eliminate craving, desire, attachment, but how can we eliminate these things? I think it's very difficult for people.
The only reason why it's difficult is because you lack wisdom of the Eightfold Path. Once you cultivate wisdom of this Eightfold Path, you'll actually see it's very straightforward. So sometimes when I talk about eliminating craving, desire, attachment, I thought what you were going to ask is, well, what am I going to do if I don't have any cravings, desires, attachments? Because that's what people are used to in the unenlightened state, is chasing after things. But you will only chase as long as that craving is in the mind. And then when that craving is not there, you'll swing to the other side. So you can learn how to train your mind to get to the point where you gradually pursue your goals, objectives, or interests through wise decision making. And you can have enthusiasm and ambition to do that. So right now, you think that it's hard or difficult to train your mind to eliminate cravings just because your mind lacks wisdom. You just don't understand what you don't understand. That's the whole three poisons. Remember, craving, anger, and ignorance? That's the whole reason why you think it's difficult, is just because you lack wisdom. But slowly but surely, when you gain wisdom of this Eightfold Path, you will then have the wisdom you need of how to eliminate your craving. And then you'll still be able to fulfill all the wonderful things that it is that you're interested in doing in life. If you'd like to be a business person or a politician or stay-at-home mom, stay-at-home dad, whatever it is that you would like to do in life, the world is your oyster, because your mind is now performing optimally by the time you get to enlightenment. But in terms of exactly how to do it, I don't have time in this course to tell you all the details. That's why I'm inviting you to the next course if you would like to learn. Or you can learn on Sundays, little by little, right? And I've got recordings, I've got videos, I've got podcasts, I've got audiobooks. You can get personal guidance. I make myself available in all these different ways, all for free. I don't charge anybody for any of this because it's like the cure to cancer, right? I'm giving it away for free because I know with 100% certainty this will work. If you learn and practice it, it will 100% work. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
And how does this taking out the craving helps you in taking decisions in your life? Because just you were talking, and I remember we had a little discussion the other day. I asked her, "Can I have your brownie?" It was on the fridge, and she said no. And I know the suffering of not having a brownie was mine. But also, like, I felt she is being selfish. Why does she not give me the brownie? Now, when comes to decision making, if I want to have a kid with her, and I want her to be generous with the kid, right? So if I just come and say, no, the problem is my craving, and I wanted the brownie, I will not be looking at her, characteristic. And how can I make decisions about people around me, whether I do this or that? I'm just giving a full example, but just like, how do I make decisions if I always bring the problem to myself?
Yeah, so you make your decisions through wisdom, through understanding the natural law of karma. That it's wise to practice generosity, but you wanted that brownie. And what the mind's going to do is it's going to cast whatever qualities are in your mind. You're going to cast those qualities onto others, even if they're unwholesome qualities. And you're going to read that reflection coming back to you as coming from the other person, where in reality is coming from your own mind. So in that situation, you were actually being selfish because I wanted that brownie. And I can only be happy if I get that brownie. Right? And now I want it for myself. So now what the mind says is, you're the selfish one. When in reality, it's your own mind. It's your mind projecting that quality of selfishness onto her and thinking that it's her, when in reality it was coming from your own mind. So the way that you look at this is, I'm sure you guys have been together for many years perhaps, and now she's been generous with you in other situations, and you know that she's not necessarily a selfish person, but in that situation, your mind wanted to label her as selfish just so you could maneuver and get that brownie. You're just trying to, convince her to give you that brownie. I don't know if you told her you thought she was selfish, but the way you make wise decisions is you look at the totality of your relationship and you're like, no, this isn't a selfish person. She's been generous with me in other situations. It's your own mind that's craving that brownie. And now you're labeling her as selfish in order to be able to try to kind of manipulate to get what you want. So that's what true reality helps you to be able to see, that it's your own mind. And now you can make wise decisions about who to involve in your life based on not having cravings. I'll give you an example of this, of how craving causes you difficulties. When I grew up very poor when I was growing up as a child. In fact, me and my sister used to fight over food because we didn't really have much food in the house, right? So when I went to school, I was the first person to kind of complete college in my family. I decided at the beginning of my very first semester, I took a life career and planning class. I decided I wanted to either be a police officer or a social worker because I really enjoyed helping people. And that's what I was interested in doing. But when I started taking some classes in other disciplines, I took a computer class. This was in the early 90s. And I realized how much money people made in the computer field. I decided to go study computers, and I got a degree in computers, and I graduated and I got a job in computers, and I made all kinds of money. But then ultimately, when I went through that, and then I opened up my own businesses for a period of time and made lots of money that way, eventually, once I extinguished that craving for money, I circled back all the way to what it was I originally was interested in doing anyway, which was to help people. But that craving took me all the way down this multiple years, decades of going down this path of technology and chasing money. Whereas if I could have gotten rid of that, if I would have known that in my early 20s, that was a craving and I could train my mind to let it go while still pursuing wealth. There's no harm in pursuing wealth. You can pursue wealth, but it's when you do it with craving that your mind's going to be distracted, and now it's going to take you down this other path. So by getting rid of craving, you can see, what is it that I really would like to be doing in this world? Instead of chasing after cravings, what would I really like to be doing? What would I really feel fulfilled to do on a daily basis? And chasing after money isn't going to make you fulfilled. But in this case, you can see how craving gets in your way of making wise decisions that's going to produce a wonderful life for yourself. Same thing, like let's just say you were going to select a life partner. And let's just say you saw this person was really rich or really famous or some high social status, has really nice car. And you're like, oh, I want to be with this person because you're craving that. Well, now let's just say you're with that person. And not, of course, this doesn't happen with everybody, but let's just, for this example, let's just say this person cheats on you, goes out with other men or women, or say this person beats you, right, and hits you. You might actually stay in that relationship just because you're holding on to that social status, to that money, to that apartment, to that house, to that vacation, to maybe this person is even just degrading and disparaging to you, talks down to you, but you continue to stay in that relationship because you're clinging to all these material objects. That stands in your way of having a wonderful, peaceful life. Whereas if you let that go, you could actually choose to maybe be with someone else, and maybe they're rich too, who knows, but maybe they will treat you better, right? Instead of just clinging to this person and craving and holding on, you can say, let go, and now move to this other thing, and now you can experience a better result. So this is how craving and clinging gets in your way of having a fulfilling, rewarding, satisfying life, where if you can train your mind to let that go, you can get to peace and joy. But each one of these aspects of your life, you have so much craving and so much clinging, you've got to let all these things go. And this path is what's going to train your mind how to do that. Mm-hmm. So there's more to it. I'm just giving you guys the first piece, the right view, because that's where it really all starts. Any other questions here? Okay. So what I'll do to end is just kind of come back to where we started, is what the teachings of the Buddha are for. What they are is to heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again. But what's hurting you is inside one's own mind. It's your own craving. It's your own longing, yearning. You can get to the point where your mind doesn't have that, and you can create a wonderful, fulfilling life for yourself, where you have harmonious relationships with everybody around you. But you're going to need the wisdom of how to do that. And that's what the Buddha helps you to be able to do. Because it's no fun walking around with anger and sadness and frustration and all these other feelings. And by seeing true reality, you can actually do the real work to do this inner growth, this inner development, becoming a better and better human being. And that's what the teachings of the Buddha are for, is to heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again. So if you guys would like to learn more, there's opportunities for you guys to do that. You guys can check our website. You can check our bulletin board. You can, or over here, we have a bulletin board. You can come talk to me and I can get you guys plugged in to the various resources that we have to be able to help you. So if you're interested in creating this transformation in your life and you're tired of the broken relationships, you're tired of the arguments and the frustration and the hostility in your relationships, you can eliminate all of that. It's just going to be gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. It just takes time to gradually train your mind in this direction, and there's help for you. I'm very motivated to be able to help you. I've set up in a way that you can learn while you're here in Chiang Mai, but you can also learn as you travel too. There's live streams, there's videos, there's podcasts, there's books. It's all available at no cost. So if you're motivated to experience this transformation, there's the ability for you to experience that. So thank you all for being interested to come learn a bit of the teachings of the Buddha. And as you guys would like to learn more, I'm here to be able to help you. So have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day, and perhaps I'll see you next time. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.